And again, welcome. Excited to have you here. We're going to get it straight from the horse's mouth. Patrick Morgan is a midshipman first class, which means he's a senior at the Naval Academy. He's in his 4th year. Just got assigned to Special Forces, I believe, which was his first choice, which is decided in your senior year, in your first class year. Patrick is native of Florence, born and bred in the area, and has been at the Academy. He will share his story, and he will share additional insights about opportunities, including summer opportunities like STEM programs, as well as the logistics of what it takes to get in and to succeed at the United States Naval Academy. Patrick, thank you for being here, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, sir. Hey, everyone. Yeah, so I'm a senior at the Naval Academy. I grew up in Florence, South Carolina, went to West Florence, ran cross country and track while I was here. And then here I am now at the Naval Academy. So I'm gonna kind of go through this slideshare that I've got up here presented on the screen. And I'll basically kind of walk you guys through a little bit of what the Naval Academy is, what the 4-year journey looks like, a little bit of what the day in the life looks like, and then we'll go into the admissions process. This might not be entirely tailored to what some of you guys are interested in hearing about, so feel free to ask any questions at the end that might be more specific to your interests. Okay, so first off, what is the Naval Academy? So it's a pretty unique institution where it is basically a 4-year public university, but also like a military training command, where at the end of the 4 years, you graduate as a commissioned officer in either the Navy or the Marine Corps. But you also will graduate with a 4-year degree. And so it'll be a 4-year degree, like a bachelor's in science, and then with a specific major that you have chosen for yourself. So it could be like a bachelor's in science with like a specialty in history or political science, but then also something more STEM related, such as like engineering or physics. The Naval Academy is composed of the Brigade of Midshipmen. That is like the main focus of the Naval Academy. It is a pretty respected research institution, but at the end of the day, the focus of the Naval Academy is not academic research. It is the midshipmen and preparing them to become commissioned officers in the future. Yeah, so as Dr. Dell said earlier, it's the kind of a unique fact, Bancroft Hall, where all the midshipmen live, is the largest dormitory in the world. Very big, very cool, historic building. Inside Bancroft, you have the Brigade of Midshipmen, which is a little over 4,000 people strong, divided into 30 different companies. I would say roughly like 140 to 150 midshipmen each. So during your time at the Naval Academy, a lot of people will like reference it being broken down into like 3 different thirds. It's definitely a very like simple way of looking at it, because obviously that's not it's not exactly how your entire time will be allotted, because you'll go from plebe summer to plebe year and then all the rest, but that's like a an 8-week, 1 year, and then 3-year breakdown. And then I'll get into a little bit about what each of those things are. So if you get into the Naval Academy, the summer after finding out, you'll go on to do plebe summer, which is basically the Naval Academy's indoctrination process. So like Naval Academy boot camp, or I would say similar to what you would do in the Navy with Navy boot camp, but more specialized to indoctrinating people into not just the Navy, but also the Naval Academy. And so that's an 8-week process, and it's, for a lot of people, it's their most difficult time at the Naval Academy during those first 8 weeks. You can see some of the focuses on the slide. A lot of physical training, military training, and focusing on learning what the military is and how to become getting your intro into, being a leader and being a professional. Following that, you'll go into your plebe year. If plebe summer is not the hardest part, most people say your plebe year is the hardest part. And it's certainly a lot longer. So with plebe year, you get into your academic studies, but you also have your plebe and military responsibilities, which can definitely be overwhelming, especially because you've newly joined the military. You're new at the Naval Academy, and then you're kind of looked down upon as like a lower class citizen while you're a plebe. And that's not to say that you're not respected as a human, but you have a lot more roles and responsibilities you have to do, and you're highly scrutinized in everything that you do. And there's a lot expected out of you. A lot of your time is generally taken away from you. You have these, mandatory morning workouts. You've got obligations that you have to do before every meal. You're stuck at the Naval Academy on the weekend. You've got the professional knowledge assessments on every Friday night during the academic year. So a lot of your time isn't your own. It's a very difficult adjustment. So your plebe year will culminate with what's called the Hearn and Climb, and that's an event that you'll do with your entire class, and is a tradition that they've been doing for a very long time at the Naval Academy, where basically you can kind of see this monument in the background, but the goal is for your entire class to remove a midshipman cover, so a sort of hat from the top of the monument, and then replace it with another one. And they kind of like lather up the stone with a lot of different like oils and stuff, so it's very slippery, and it's a really big challenge, and kind of just like a spectacle event to watch. And they air that on live television every year, so that's certainly something to look out for. So after that, you go on to your other 3 years, which is your sophomore, your junior, and your senior year, or you could call it a third class, second class, first class year, as we call it at the Naval Academy. So you can kind of see the breakdown there on the slide, but during those next 3 years, you kind of progress in your academic studies. When you are a third class, that's when you first start into your academic major. And then you get into your second class, and that's where you're in like kind of the heart of your academic major and doing the most academic work. And then you get to your first class year, where you're kind of like where you want to be in your academics. You've chosen your specialties, you're doing your research, or working on a final project. From the military side of things, your third class year, you are mentoring the freshmen, the plebes, and you're first exploring a little bit for yourself how you're going to spend your time and what you want to do after you graduate. Your second class year is where you really have to decide that, and where you're given a lot more responsibility to train plebes and lead the brigade. And then finally, when you're a first class, you have decided what you want to do, you've put in your preferences, and then you and your entire class are entrusted with leading the brigade of midshipmen. So a little bit more of like a micro breakdown of like what your daily schedule looks like. And this is definitely a simplification of the schedule, but it's a unique schedule for sure. It's not very similar to a normal college schedule, but every day you've got 2 formations at 7 and 12 before every meal, and those are done with your company as like a military formation. The breakfast formation is kind of the start to your day. Anything before that is kind of like an optional period of time to work out or personally condition. When you're a freshman, you'll spend that time doing a mandatory workout. It's definitely a little less control of your time there. Following your 7 o'clock formation, you'll go down to a mandatory breakfast where you'll eat with your entire company, and then you'll go into your academic day, and that'll go for about 4 hours, where you'll have 4 different class periods. It's kind of broken down more like a high school class schedule, where you have these set 1-hour class periods, where you rotate through different classes. You don't like go to one. If you have a 3-hour class, you don't just go to that class for a 3-hour lecture, which would be kind of like a more conventional college learning environment, you would go to that class maybe first period Monday, Wednesday, Friday, or you'd go for an hour and a half Tuesday, Thursday, where you would like utilize your first and your second period. Yeah, it follows a little bit more of like a regimented high school style class schedule. So your 6 periods each day is broken up by a lunch period that goes from 12 to 1:30. So like I said, you have that formation again at 12 with your entire company, and then you go down to a mandatory lunch with the entire brigade, and you sit with your company. Following that, you have about a 45-minute period of time where you have it's either your own personal time. You may have a mandatory training that you have to go to, or there may be an optional like training or lecture that you can attend at your own discretion. So the last final academic period of the day ends at about 3:20 each day. And from then you have about a 2-hour window for your athletic period. This is another like pretty unique part of the Naval Academy where everyone is basically required to do some sort of like athletic experience. And for a lot of people, that's a Division I sport, which can, I guess called a varsity sport, that can vary from doing like football, baseball, basketball, all the way down to like being on the boxing team, the rowing team, the triathlon team, something like that. And there's also a lot of other club sports and then club activities that you can do during that time. And if you do nothing else, then you'll have to compete on one of your company intramural teams. So that generally runs from about 4 to 6, and then from 5:30 to 7:30, dinner is open. And that's a lot more of a relaxed environment. It's not like the breakfast and lunch where it's a required meal and you have formation before. You just go down to dinner at your own kind of time and urgency. Following that, you have study period, which goes from 8 to 11 o'clock. And as a plebe, you're required, I believe as a plebe and a youngster, you're required to spend that time studying. As an upper class, you have a little bit more freedom to either spend that time studying, working out, or using your time as you feel fit. Kind of another time period in between that, from like 7 to 8, is that period is reserved for any club that you're in. They can use that time to meet and do things as a group where things generally can't get scheduled during that time unless it's kind of a professional meeting for the entire brigade. But those times are generally reserved for any sort of extracurricular activity outside of sports. So here's kind of a list of the available majors. So the Naval Academy is a very, very STEM focused school. However, there are some of the humanities and social sciences majors available, but I don't have the exact number, but it's somewhere around like 70% of every class is required to be a STEM major. And that's is a mandate from Congress, and is a very big priority for the Naval Academy, is producing, I guess, STEM qualified officers. This is an image of kind of like what the core curriculum looks like. This isn't, I think the idea is that everyone will take this exact curriculum, but this isn't exactly what it looks like for everyone. There's a few variations, and this is not including your majors classes. So you would take this core curriculum, and then you also have your majors classes that would kind of fill in the white spaces that you see at the bottom. Definitely a little bit more than that for most majors. And a few of those classes maybe will change based on your major. I guess, for example, you've got the engineering and the littoral zone and the principles of ship performance classes right there. Since I'm an ocean engineering major, and since I'm in that major, I don't take those 2 core classes because a lot of my majors classes would already like cover what they're talking about and a little bit more in depth. So I guess a little bit of talk about like, being a midshipman, what do those like benefits, what does the pay look like? So while you're at the midshipman, while you are a midshipman, you're technically getting paid, a salary that's around like $2,000 a month. However, you don't see really any of that money, except for that like stipend there at the bottom that varies depending on what grade you're in. All of that money goes towards paying your like room and board, and some of your basic expenses, and then things that you never pay for, things like such as tuition. That's completely covered by the Naval Academy, and then you are covered medically and dentally by like the Department of Defense insurance. So you really go the whole time. You'll never pay anything for school. You don't pay any of the transportation that you go to and from training activities, but you definitely will spend a lot of personal money on doing activities on the weekends, getting out, things such as that, traveling home on breaks. Those are really the only costs that you'll ever have to spend. So we're gonna go through a couple slides that kind of give like a little bit of an idea of what, some of the services that you'll graduate and choose, what they look like. If anyone has any questions on that, we can go back to those. But upon graduation, you can be a surface warfare officer. That's basically just driving a ship and leading the sailors that work on those ships, like you see in some of the images. Submarine officer, very similar to surface, however, you're on submarines instead of ships. They do a lot of very like secret classified stuff that I don't know about, and a lot of people will never know about. So that's certainly a unique community. You've got aviation, which can be Navy or Marine, so flying jets or helicopters, like you might have seen if you've seen the new Top Gun. That's naval aviation. There's also a Marine Corps aviation that is an option. A little bit of a different mission, but they fly. They fly jets and helicopters in the Marine Corps as well. Special warfare. That's a Navy option, as well as explosive ordnance disposal, or EOD. I guess that SEALs and EOD both fall under the special warfare category. And then finally, the Marine Corps. As I said, you can be a pilot in the Marine Corps, or you can be a Marine ground officer. And there's a variety of specialties that you can do as a Marine, whether that be an infantry officer, an artillery officer, logistics officer. You can be in the cyber community, all sorts of different options. This is a demographic of what I believe this is last year's service assignment totals, but it could be this year's. I don't think it is though. This is kind of like how much of.
Yeah, it's not this year. It's prior year.
Yeah. This is, how many people per class go to these different communities. And you can kind of see like how competitive some of them are, or like generally what people end up doing. But the biggest groups are the aviation, surface, and marine communities. A little bit on the admissions process. It's definitely a lot more of like a rigorous process than a typical, public university. If you follow the tree there, the first thing you have to do is fill out a preliminary application. And then that's a very basic application. If you fill that out, submit it, and you'll get an email back basically telling you if you've been accepted to be a candidate for the Naval Academy or not. And then if you have become a candidate, you'll be given access to kind of an application portal where you'll have to send in a lot of information, schedule a lot of different appointments, and kind of check those boxes. So, one of the things you have to do is medically qualify. And that's, getting through the Department of Defense medical qualification system. That can be a little tricky if you have any sort of, background allergies or health problems. But you basically, you have to schedule a few different, appointments, get your, your eyes checked out, your hearing checked out, and then just like, general physical assessments. You have to pass a, candidate fitness test, which has to be administered to you by I think your BGO can administer it. Any sort of sports, high school sports coach or PE coach can administer it. And that's some of the things you have to do for that test are like run a mile, do a max test of push-ups, pull-ups, I think sit-ups, then a couple other tests. And then you have to send in your test scores. You have to write a few essays, send in your class rank, your GPA information. And then kind of a more unconventional thing is that you have to get a nomination. And that's basically like a recommendation from someone to go to the Naval Academy. But for the Naval Academy, it can't just be from anyone. It has to be a nomination from a congressman, a senator, or you can apply for like the vice president nomination. And each of those people will have their own application process, but you only need one of those nominations to go to the Naval Academy. So you'll have your local congressman. You can apply for his nomination. You can apply for you have your 2 state senators, or you can apply for the vice president nomination, which is they kind of get more competitive as the scope of who available kind of opens up. So your congressional nomination is generally the easier one to get. It gets harder from there. So I guess here's a little tab that just gives like advice for admissions. It's obviously good to take things like AP classes. It's good to have high SAT, ACT scores. They're looking for people that have, leadership roles in high school, either in like student councils or athletic leadership roles. And then they really want people who have a strong foundation in math and science so that you're not entering the Naval Academy behind your peers in your math and science qualifications. So I guess here's another a breakdown of kind of demographics at the Naval Academy. You can see like, what are the different things that people do like leadership wise that, is generally more common at the Naval Academy. What are people's different educational backgrounds coming in? Hopefully you guys can see the demographic. It's a little small on my page, but I think blown up, you should be able to see it. What are the different competitive maths, test data and stuff like that. Give you a second to look at that.
So I'm looking at bottom line about, is that 16,000 apply and 1,374 were appointed. 951 male, 413 female. And of those appointed, I guess an 1183 attended. Again, it's about 2-to-1 male, female. Varsity athletics are high. Community service activities are high. So those are kind of interesting things to see, to get in where the nominations came from. So thank you for sharing.
Then here's a demographic from this year's service assignment, where everyone went, how much of each community was assigned. I'm missing the slide about the summer seminar and summer STEM, but those are two different summer. So there's a summer seminar, summer STEM, which are two different summer programs that are available for midshipmen to do, or not midshipmen, for people who are interested in the Naval Academy to do. There they are. You can kind of see the slide for the information about those, but basically, if you go to summer STEM, you'll you'll kind of get a look at what more of the Naval Academy academic life is like and the opportunities there. And if you go to summer seminar, you'll get to a little bit more of a look at the professional kind of leadership and military training that you'll do at the Naval Academy. And those two are kind of offered to two different, I guess, age groups. I think you have to be a rising 11th grader to do summer seminar, and I think summer STEM takes a younger group. But you can, click on either of those links if you're interested, or just Google USNA summer STEM or summer seminar.
By the way, there's a nice summary that number 1 down there, ranked number 1 top public college in the country, number 4 best undergraduate engineering program, number 6 best national liberal arts college in the country. I think that speaks a lot for the Naval Academy.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it kind of goes back to what I said earlier with, the Naval Academy is highly regarded as an academic and research institution. And there's definitely has a lot of influence, academics has a lot of influence on what we do at the Naval Academy. But that's all I have for the slides. If anyone has any questions about the Naval Academy or about my personal experience.
I will throw the contact information on this slide is there for
Yep.
either Patrick or myself, if anybody has any questions that wants to get in touch. So it is accessible.
And